Hello everyone, it's Miss Ashley here again, and I'm going to be reading you your third KidzLit book this summer called National Parks of the U.S.A, written by Kate Siber and illustrated by Chris Turnham. Now this book is a rather big book, and I have split it into 5 different parts, and so we are going to be doing part 1. Welcome to the National Parks of the USA. Get ready for a big adventure. On your journey through the national parks, you'll find the mind-boggling wonders from the continent's biggest peak to a mile-deep canyon, dark swamps filled with critters, and volcanoes that pelt lava straight into the sea. Creatures big and small abound in these wild lands, from thundering bison to tiny seahorses. The parks protect some of America's most spectacular landscapes, wild animals, and precious plants. But these natural reserves didn't always exist. A few forward-thinking citizens dreamed up the idea way back in the 1800s. They saw the flood of pioneers streaming into the American West, gobbling up land for houses, farms, and other human purposes. These visionaries worried that all the majestic vistas would disappear and called for territory to be set aside in its natural state. In 1872, Congress and President Ulysses S. Grant established the world's first national park, Yellowstone. People came from all over by train and stagecoach to see its unbelievable wonders. Geysers shooting hundreds of feet into the sky, hot springs painted wild colors, and huge bears, elk, and wolves. By the turn of the century, other national parks were born, such as Sequoia, which has trees as big as 20-story buildings, and Yosemite, where waterfalls roar down cliffs taller than skyscrapers. Now the Park Service preserves monuments, battlefields, and other sites, but the 60 national parks are still the cream of the crop. Each one protects a unique landscape and sites that you can't see anywhere else. What are you waiting for? Turn the page and see what you can discover in the great national parks of the USA. The eastern United States is crowded with big cities, but wild, untamed lands hide in their midst. In the ancient Appalachian Mountains, black bears, deer, and elk roam. Waterfalls trickle and tumble, and mist blankets the valleys like puffy cotton balls. It's a different scene on the coast. In northern waters, lobsters and crabs patrol the seafloor or hide in tide pools, and loons cry their eerie howls on the surface. In the aquamarine seas of Florida, coral reefs are like bustling, multicolored cities for fish. There are even traffic jams. Because this part of the country was one of the earliest to be settled by Europeans, many of the eastern parks also have historic buildings to explore. Imagine what it was like to be a soldier stationed at a fort 100 years ago, or a settler living off the land in an Appalachian cabin you'd built yourself. So some of the places we're going to explore on the East Coast is Acadia. You can climb a granite dome for views over the sea, or wade into a tide pool to find mussels, limpets, and other creepy crawlies. Then we're going to go to Shenandoah. In Shenandoah, more than 500 miles of hiking trails wind through leafy forests, stroll to the top of round mountains or peaceful waterfalls. And then there's also the Congaree. Paddling a canoe through Cedar Creek, stare up at some of the tallest deciduous trees in America. This is the largest old-growth bottomland hardwood forest in the USA. And then we're going to go to the Biscayne. After that is the Everglades, where the dry tortugas live, and the Great Smoky Mountains. Floating in a boat in Biscayne Bay, you see a huge expanse of turquoise water, islands, and distant mazes of mangrove trees. But 95% of this park is actually underwater. Strap on your snorkel and dip beneath the surface to see a cornucopia of fish and corals, from tiny gobbies to colorful parrotfish, who look like they're dressed up for a really tacky dance party. About 600 species of fish live in Biscayne, more than all of the animal species in Yellowstone National Park. There are also plenty of marine mammals like dolphins and manatees. Can you spot a loggerhead turtle? See if you can keep up as she gracefully swims to the surface to take a breath. Okay, so Biscayne is located in the great state of Florida. It was founded in 1980, and it is 172,974 acres big. Some animals we've got here is the loggerhead turtle. Sea turtles travel far and wide to find crabs, jellyfish, and seaweed. A female always returns to her birth beach to lay eggs, sometimes a journey of more than 1,000 miles. The brown pelican can store 3 times as many fish in their beak pouches as they can in their stomachs. Elkhorn Coral this threatened coral lives in shallow water and looks like antlers, sometimes growing bigger than 6 feet. The Florida strangler fig sprouts high on another tree, then spirals its roots down to the ground, often growing so large it shades its host, weakening or killing it. The Shaw swallowtail is one of the state's rarest butterflies. The Shaw swallowtail lives for only 1 month and has a neat trick. It can stop mid-air and suddenly fly backwards. Seagrasses are lush underwater seagrass beds offer food and hiding places for many animals, from tiny shrimp to huge manatees. They've also got some Atlantic bottlenose dolphins. These friendly creatures often play in the bow waves of boats. They use echolocation to see objects under the water, making clicking sounds and waiting to hear the echoes. The coconut palm can grow up to 80 feet tall, and their coconuts can float in the ocean for hundreds of miles before sprouting in a new home. The bull shark eats just about anything, from fish and turtles to birds and even other sharks. They prefer shallow water, sometimes traveling hundreds of miles upriver. Then we have an invasive species called the lionfish. Zebra-striped lionfish are beautiful but dangerous. Their 18 feathery spines are so venomous that even human beings get a doozy of a sting from touching them. These foot-long fish are also an invasive species. Biologists believe they first showed up in U.S. waters in 1985 when someone released them from a home aquarium. They quickly spread, eating up native fish. Rangers are now catching lionfish to prevent them from spreading. Their flesh, which isn't poisonous, tastes great and is served in restaurants. And they've also got some coral reefs. These oceans are huge, but most sea life lives where there's good food and hiding places like coral reefs. Corals might look like rocks, but they're actually tiny animals that suck calcium from seawater and create protective limestone skeletons. They grow in all sorts of crazy colors and shapes, creating homes for fish. Like a city, there's activity here day and night. Big fish and eels stop by cleaner stations where cleaner wrasse, shrimp, and gobbies nibble parasites and dead off their bodies. Tiny damselfish are farmers and grow algae to eat, but watch out. They are protective and might nip at your mask. A neon-colored parrotfish bite off the little pieces of coral and poop it out as sand. Now you know where all that sand around reefs comes from. It's parrotfish poop. The air feels heavy and humid as you paddle through a mangrove forest. Birds squawk and sing overhead, and a manatee glides by. Welcome to the Everglades, the largest subtropical wilderness in the country. In these 1.5 million acres, you'll find diverse habitats, from the open waters of Florida Bay to sawgrass prairies threaded by rivers. While you walk along a boardwalk called the Anhinga Trail, watch for fish circling in the clear water below. A turtle the size of a dinner plate balances on a rock like he's flying, and an alligator floats as still as a log. In the distance, listen for the gators bellowing. It sounds like deep dog growls. So the Everglades are also located in Florida. They were founded in 1947, and their size is 1,542,526 acres. So in the Everglades, they've got some mangrove forests. With the help of their stilt-like roots, red, white, and black mangrove trees grow over shallow water. They form maze-like thickets that protect the coast from storms and are tough for humans to travel through, but birds and fish don't mind. Pelicans, wood storks, and cormorants nest in mangrove branches. Sharks, grouper, and snapper all raise babies here. You might even see tree crabs clambering upside down on branches. If you startle them, they'll drop down into the water or your canoe. They've also got a Lygus tree sail. These tree snails come in wild colors and stripes: green, pink, yellow, orange, and brown. They slide along tree branches on trails of their own mucus. The clamshell orchid is a flower that poachers have stolen, so many of these plants there aren't many left. See if you can spot one on their rare, spectacular blooms. The Cardinal Air Plant survives by attaching to a tree and sucking nutrients out of the air and rain. Frogs like to lay eggs in their leaves. The bald cypress tree grows in groups in mucky areas, creating leafy domes like green churches that make shady homes for frogs, birds, and other creatures. Sawgrass grows at least as tall as you in great waving meadows, but be careful, they have rows of tiny, sharp teeth. The West Indian manatee is gentle, slow-moving manatee, or sea cows, are mammals just like us, but they live their whole lives underwater, growing as big as 1,500 pounds, just on a diet of marine plants. The Florida Panther. You need patience and good luck to spot these rare, secretive cats. They silently stalk the Everglades for deer, hogs, raccoons, and rabbits. The Marsh Rabbit, unlike their land-loving cousins, these bunnies love to swim. They paddle through swamps searching for herbs, flowers, and other plants to nibble on. The spoonbill nests in big, noisy groups in mangrove trees. During mating, a couple kisses by crossing their long, spoon-shaped bills. Alligators were once endangered because humans hunted them for their belly skin, which makes nice leather. Now they thrive in southern Florida, growing up to 15 feet long. And now we have a human threat, the plume trade. There were once so many birds in the Everglades that great flocks blotted out the sun. But in the late 1800s and early 1900s, fashionable ladies started to wear fancy hats decorated with bird feathers. The style encouraged hunters to kill beautiful birds by the millions, devastating the Everglades. Bird lovers responded by founding some of the country's first conservation clubs, which helped pass laws to protect these feathery friends. Now you can see birds like herons and snowy egrets all over the Everglades. More than 10 million people visit the Great Smoky Mountains National Park every year, more than any other park in the country. Why is it so popular? Find out by hiking through 5 different forest types, from low, dry hardwoods to high spruce woods that smell like Christmas trees. Scenic vistas over the mountains pop out everywhere. In spring, the land is covered in wildflowers. In fall, the deciduous trees turn into a rainbow of reds, oranges, and golds. Hear some sticks crackling? It could be one of the park's 1,500 black bears poking around for berries, or maybe a white-tailed deer looking for forage. Rain is common, so cinch up your rain slicker, or just enjoy the wet, cool mist and the sounds of moving water that ring through the forest. All right, so the Great Smoky Mountains are in actually 2 states. They're in North Carolina as well as Tennessee. It was founded in 1934, and it is 522,427 acres. Some animals we've got here is the downy woodpecker. Rat-a-tat-tat-tat-tat. That's a rapid-fire sound of a downy woodpecker hammering its hard beak against a tree in the forest. Black bears eat mainly nuts, fruit, dead animals, and the occasional ant colony. They can run as fast as 30 miles per hour. I bet none of y'all can run that fast. The brook trout. These colorful striped fish live in cool streams high in the mountains. Fishers love them for their beauty and delicate flavor. Jack in the Pulpit. This park has more flowering plants than any other park, over 1,500 species. Jack in the Pulpit's roots are toxic when raw, but Native Americans knew to dry them and cook them before eating. The Pygmy Shrew. This tiny burrowing mammal weighs less than a dime, but can give birth to as many as 8 babies at a time. The flame azalea can grow as high as 12 feet, which is twice as tall as a grown man. Flame azaleas have showy reddish-orange flowers the size of golf balls. Salamanders, there are 30 species of them that live in this park and more than any other place in the world. Pick them up with a plastic bag so you don't damage their skin, which they use to breathe. The great horned owl has excellent hearing and night vision. The great horned owl swoops down after dark to grab mice, snakes, rabbits, and even other owls. The Eastern Hemlock. Some of the park's Eastern Hemlock sprouted as long ago as the 1750s. That's before our country was even born. There are more than 2,000 miles of streams that weave through the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. With lots of steep land, that means only one thing: waterfalls. Ramsey Cascades is the tallest waterfall in the park, tumbling down slippery algae-covered rocks for about 100 feet. Sometimes, if the sun angle is just right, you can see tiny rainbows in the waterfall's mist. Fireflies, also known as lightning bugs, only live for about 3 weeks, but during their brief lives, they put on amazing light shows with their glowing bellies. Synchronous fireflies, one of the park's 19 species of lightning bugs, are the only kind that can time their flashes all at once. In May and June, these colorful beetles light up the whole hillsides in waves of greenish-yellow lights and attract visitors on firefly tours. Euro-American settlers lived in the hidden valleys of the Smokies starting in the early 1800s. Since they were so far from towns, everything had to be made by hand from materials found in the forest, so they were often skilled woodworkers and craftspeople. With no doctors, schools, or stores, life was tough. You can still visit their old barns and cabins today, and about 150 cemeteries remain. Find the old headstone overgrown with grass and shrubs. Some date back more than 200 years. Lace up your hiking boots. This park is known for steep trails that beeline straight up granite mountains. Some paths are so steep they have iron ladders and rungs. You could be the first person in the country to see the sunrise if you get to the top of Cadillac Mountain before dawn. Far below, seals and porpoises play in the cold, deep blue water, and lobsters and crabs crawl about on the seafloor. Paddle a kayak through the silky waters and take a whiff of the briny air. You might spot an eagle swooping overhead. Hear that long, spooky wail? That's the cry of a loon traveling through the fog. So Acadia is in the state of Maine. It was founded in 1916, and it is 49,630 acres. Some animals and plants we've got here is the warbler. These small, colorful birds love Acadia because it has diverse forests and wetlands full of delicious insects. Listen for their complex songs, pips, and cheeps. White-tailed deer live everywhere from the Arctic to Peru. They escape predators by hiding, running quickly, and moving silently. The peregrine falcon can dive as fast as 200 miles an hour, striking other birds in midair and then eating them. The sugar maple turns red, orange, and gold every autumn. In spring, they release sugary sap, which locals have made into maple syrup for centuries. You can pluck blueberries from sunny mountaintops, meadows, and forest edges for a tasty snack. The common juniper is a tough shrub that grows spiny needles that repel hungry animals and survives wind and cold by tucking behind rocks. Lobsters are ill-tempered beasts, eating just about anything that crosses their path and fighting to determine who's boss. They also molt their shells and grow new ones as many as 25 times during the first 5 years of life. No wonder why they're grumpy. Ferns. Under the cool, moist shade of the forest, you'll find a sea of green ferns, some with fronds as big as 2.5 feet. Porpoises. That's the sound of a porpoise exhaling through its blowholes. These relatives of the dolphins live close to shore in shallow waters, but they're very shy. The American mink is the size of a small house cat. They hunt fish, frogs, and mice and are prized for their warm, luxurious fur. Unlike tidal mudflats, which smell like rotten eggs, wetlands smell fresh and earthy. If the 3-foot grasses are taller than you, stand up on a log to look around. Warblers and ducks fill the air with songs, trills, and quacks. Frogs croak while dragonflies zoom around looking for insects to eat. In the distance, a beaver contemplates the next tree he'll bite. Sphagnum moss lives in some wetlands. This soft plant has antiseptic properties and was used for bandages during the Civil War. And that, my friends, brings me to end of part 1 of our book. I hope you guys had some good discussions about this book and maybe you learned a new thing or two in our reading today. I'll see you guys next time for part 2.